Hello friends, welcome to Navyuk. So this is going to be our first introductory class on how to prepare for the post of credit officer in Bank of India or other government banks. Here is the list of the certifications that I have done. The reason why I am sharing this information is so that you are rest assured that whatever information is being shared will be useful and will help you in clearing the exam. Now in this video, I have given a brief background on what is happening in the Indian economy and the global economy, and also why it is important for a credit officer to understand these things. So this video will brief you regarding the background and the important things that you need to understand before you start your preparation for the exam. Further, reading the book is one part of the preparation. Many freshers lack experience. So through this video, I have tried to share my experiences as a banker and how credit officers they appraise proposals. So if you have not subscribed this channel, I request you to subscribe to this channel. You will get very useful and relevant information along with the experiences, how a banker takes credit decisions, what all things are to be considered before a loan is processed and sanctioned. Lot many of you have asked as to how we need to approach this exam, especially for the post of credit officer in Bank of India. So one of the important question is, before we start our preparation, we need to understand how the economy works and the role of bankers in it, and especially credit. Why banks, they need to lend. So an understanding of how the economy works, what is happening in the global financial system, why we are seeing increasing number of NPAs, frauds. So this basic understanding helps us in preparing for our exams in an effective manner. Okay, reading a book is separate thing that can become very theoretical. So here I'll try to give you real life experiences so that you can correlate. Otherwise, for a fresher, merely reading through a book is not sufficient, because he or she is not getting real life experiences as to how a banker works. So my first point is, why do banks lend? What is the need for lending? Now, basically, banks, they take deposits from people and they have to give a certain return to those customers in the form of interest. So if a customer has made a term deposit, he or she is expecting certain rate of interest. So bank has an obligation to pay to these customers. So they lend this money. Banks, they give this money to people or borrowers who are in need of it, and banks expect a return in the form of interest. Through this interest income, bank repays the depositors, and whatever is left goes to the profitability of the bank after deducting the expenses and other operational expenses. Now, there are certain risks around credit. You are giving your money, so you need to ensure that you are giving it to a person who will be in a position to return that money. Because actually it is not your money, it is depositors' money. And if as a bank is unable to recover this money, from where will the bank repay the depositors? So this is a big challenge for the bank. And that is why we have a committee called ALCO, Asset Liability Committee, at the head office level, at the management level. Basically, it ensures that whatever mismatches exists between assets and liabilities, there is no liquidity problems. Say we are taking deposits from customers for 5 years, 7 years. Okay, so we have taken the money for 5 years, 7 years. Now, if we sanction long-term loans, if we sanction a loan for 10 years, 15 years, how will be in a position to repay those customers to whom the bank needs to repay after 5 years, 7 years? So there is a liquidity mismatch. Now, to cover this up, bank takes certain positions in the money market. In case of need, bank can raise money from the money market for short terms up to 1 year. So there are certain risks around credit. And for a banker, it is very important that the banker understands those risks. Now, bank in itself does not lend. It is the credit officers who do. The credit officer will appraise the loan based on the credit policy of the bank, and the sanctioning authority will sanction the loan. So since there are a number of branches for a bank, there are thousands of employees, there has to be a well laid out policy. That policy is the guiding document. The board of directors and the management, they decide as to what level the bank will be taking risks, because lending is all about risks. Okay, you cannot lend without taking any kind of risk. So you have to take a calculated risk. So through credit policy, the board of the directors or the management of the bank, it shares to what extent the bank is willing to take risks, to which sector bank is willing to lend. And certain sectors are such where bank says, no, we will not lend because these are too risky. Like banks will never sanction you loan for gambling, it's a prohibited sector. So the credit officer has to be well versed with the credit policy. That is the guiding document. Even after reading these books, whatever I have recommended, ultimately it is the credit policy that guides a loan officer as to whether he or she will sanction a loan or not. If the credit policy of the bank does not allow lending to a particular sector, you cannot. If you do, bank will initiate disciplinary action against you. So we were talking about risks around credit. So one of the major risks is credit risk. The risk that whatever money we have given to a borrower, that money may never come back, or it may come back partially. So this is a credit risk. If I have given rupees 100 to a borrower, and if that 100 rupees does not come back along with the interest, I am going to be in a problem because I have to repay that money to the depositors. So credit risk is one of the foremost risks when we talk about credit. Then we have liquidity risk, because if the bank does not get its money back from the borrowers, from where will the bank pay to its depositors? This will lead to liquidity problems for the bank, and this may ultimately lead to reputational risks. So there are a number of risks, but these three are the major risks that are around credit. So now we need to have an understanding of the overall economy. So since COVID, the credit offtake has reduced. So because of that, banks are in a problem that they are not able to lend. Borrowers are not coming upfront to take loans, especially corporates. Big corporates are not approaching banks for loans. They are preferring to go to capital markets, or they are raising funds from abroad through external commercial borrowings. Plus, the Russia-Ukraine war has led to inflation. The increased crude oil prices is affecting almost all the sectors of the economy. So inflation is again a major challenge, because RBI has to suitably modify its monetary policy to factor in the rising costs, which is inflation. So the Monetary Policy Committee, it has this mandate to control the level of inflation in the country. They have been given a target, that is 4 plus minus 2%. This is the cap within which RBI has to keep the level of inflation in India. This is called inflation targeting. They have a target to keep the level of inflation between 4 plus minus 2%. So the increasing crude oil prices, they are challenging our economy, because if the crude oil prices increase, they affect our foreign exchange reserves. The slowing world economy due to COVID, there is lot less demand, because of which the global economy is slowing down, and which is leading to increased unemployment, because if there won't be demand, companies will not manufacture products or services, and if they'll not manufacture products or services, that is going to increase unemployment. Okay, these are some of the challenges. For a credit officer, it is important that you understand the bigger picture, the background. Now, if we talk about the challenges in the Indian context, we have increasing NPAs. Most of the public sector banks are seeing a spurt in NPAs. Okay. Now, when NPAs increase, they affect the profitability of the bank. They affect the capital availability of the bank. They affect the market pricing, the share price of the bank, of the PSU. So all these in turn create further challenges for the bank. On top of it, we have increasing number of frauds. Digital frauds or cyber frauds are one part of it, but then there are many frauds which are affecting the balance sheets of the banks, that are actually being created through the credit field, the credit sector. that we've given a loan and it turns bad, and that affects the entire profitability of the bank. We have many borrowers who are indulging in diversion of funds. So role of due diligence, enhanced due diligence, and effective credit appraisal comes to the picture. So here the role of an effective credit officer comes to the picture. It is the responsibility of the credit officer to ensure that he has done necessary due diligence. There is continuous monitoring of the account so as to ensure that we are checking whether the end use of funds is being confirmed or not. So who is going to do this? This is to be done by the credit officer. We've already said the reducing profitability for banks is a major challenge. Because of this, banks are unable to raise capital easily from the market, or the cost of capital increases. Thus, it again affects the profitability of the bank. This is one part of it. Okay. Now, when we talk about what we have to study for the exam, I have given you the name of the book, which is Banker's Handbook on Credit Management. Now, this book is actually for certified credit professionals from Indian Institute of Banking and Finance, which is one of the RBI recognized certifications. So what Reserve Bank of India says, that if you are a bank and if you have credit officers, then you need to ensure that your credit officers are certified in this field. Either they have certified credit professional certification from IIBF, or they get certificate in commercial credit from Moody's, or they get credit management from NIBM Pune, or they do certified credit research analyst certification from AIWMI, which is now called eQualify. So this will give you an idea as to how even the regulator, Reserve Bank of India, understands that the credit officers, they play a critical role. Because if a credit officer is not well aware, if he does not know regarding the policies, or how to appraise the loans, that is going to affect the quality of loans and the level of NPAs in the bank. So this book is more than sufficient to prepare for the exam. Now, on top of it, you will have to go through the website of Reserve Bank of India. You will have to go through the master directions and master circulars. Like there are IRAC norms. You must know when an account turns SMA, when it turns NPA, what happens when an account turns NPA, what are the levels of provisioning banks have to do, what happens when the account turns doubtful, and what happens when the account turns loss asset. So apart from this, like I said, you have to read a financial newspaper as well. You can choose either the Mint or Economic Times, because one of your papers is going to be around general awareness with special reference to banking industry. Okay, now let me ask you if you have any questions. That ways it will be easy to answer. So any one of you may go ahead with your questions. Acha, meanwhile, let me just give you a brief as to what happens. Say I am in a bank and a customer walks in and he says, I need a loan. Now you may have studied the entire book, okay, but that is only in theory. Now you do not know what is actually needs to be done when you are sitting in a branch. So once the customer walks in, you will talk to the customer as to what his requirement is. He may be a retail customer. He may want to take a housing loan, a car loan, a personal loan. Okay, these are retail loans. Or he may want a business loan. He may say, I want a Mudra loan, or I want a loan under PMEGP scheme, which has a subsidy, or I do not have any property to offer. So either you sanction me loan under Stand Up India, or you sanction me under CGTMSC. So now you see what I am doing is I am talking about the schemes of the government and how the bank will use these schemes to give loan to a borrower. We are about to mix multiple things. This is what a banker does. This is what a credit officer does. So just imagine you're sitting in a branch and a customer walks in, and let's say she's a lady and she wants to do a boutique business. Okay. So she says that, I want to do a business and I want loan. So you will ask her as to how much loan she needs and what is the purpose of the loan. Now, depending upon the awareness level of the borrower, she may be either blank, she may know nothing. She may say, मुझे तो बस पैसा चाहिए. Or she may be very well aware. She may know कि हाँ मुझे 4 लाख रुपए की जरूरत है.
So that depends on the awareness of the borrower. At times you may get very well aware borrowers. So the first thing you will do is you will take the application from the customer, because only once you have the application and the basic KYC like your PAN card and Aadhaar card, you can check the CIBIL report of the borrower. Okay, now I'm telling you the practical part, how these things work. So once you've taken these details, you will check the CIBIL report of the customer. If the CIBIL report of the customer is satisfactory, when I say satisfactory, that means it is as per the laid out policy of the bank. If your bank in which you are working as a credit officer says, do not sanction loan to people whose CIBIL scores are below 600, you cannot. So if she has a CIBIL score of 600 or above, you can proceed with the application, or else you cannot.
Similarly, if the CIBIL report shows that the borrower has any overdue loans, that means there is a loan wherein the EMI or principal has not been repaid, or if there is any loan that has been settled. So these are the cases wherein you cannot go ahead and process the application. Now, since you've checked the CIBIL report and the borrower is preliminary eligible for the loan,
then you will tell her what other documents are required, and you will do a pre-sanction visit. Pre-sanction visit is done so as to check where the borrower will be doing the business. It is also done to check where the borrower lives. If he or she has given a particular address on the Aadhaar card, whether that borrower actually lives there or not. And you also do a reference check. That means you will talk to the neighbors or people around just to find out how the person is. At times during these visits you get to know कि इन्होंने तो बहुत लोन लिया हुआ है, इनके पास तो बैंक्स बहुत आते हैं. So there is a possibility कि उसकी सिबिल रिपोर्ट में कोई लोन रिफ्लेक्ट ना करे. He or she may be a defaulter of some other bank. So during the pre-sanction visits, this is what you do. This is the role of a credit officer. The branch manager can accompany the credit officer. Okay, but this is what the credit officer needs to do. He or she will do a pre-sanction visit to the place of business and also to the place of residence. And then you will give a 1 or 2 page report. There is a format available with the bank on which you need to give that pre-sanction visit report. So if your pre-sanction visit report is satisfactory, if you think the borrower is whatever she told you, that means you're satisfied, you can go ahead with the application process. Now you will tell the borrower the kind of documents that are required. For example, she needed a mudra loan of 2 lakh rupees. Here the government guideline says that up to 2 lakh rupees, you need not ask borrower for any special documents. They can simply make balance sheet or profit and loss on a plain piece of paper. They will simply tell you how much sales they will do in next 1 year and what will be their profit and all. Plus, income tax returns are not required. They are not mandatory. Udyam registration number is required, what we call as URN. That can be made free of cost. So once the borrower gives you these documents, you will start the appraisal process. You will process those documents. You will check the balance sheet. You will see the capital, the fixed assets, borrowings, debtors, creditors. Okay. And most of the banks, they have either a software in which you put in these figures. And then it will tell you what we call as ratio analysis. It will say whether the current ratio is 1.17, 1.33. I mean, whatever percentage it is, you have to check whether that is within the acceptable levels of the bank. You will check debt equity ratio. There are certain ratios that are to be checked. So this is what a credit officer does. So you'll prepare the entire process note. You will write things about the borrower, like name of the firm, what is the name of the business, who is the owner, what kind of business is being done, is it manufacturer, is it trader, or is it service sector, how much loan does the borrower require, what does the pre-sanction visit say, and what does your financial analysis say, the different ratios, the profitability as per the profit and loss. And then the credit officer will recommend. The credit officer has to write a line that on the basis of information given by the borrower and analysis of financial documents, I hereby recommend mudra loan of rupees so and so to the borrower for purpose of so and so. So this recommendation is very important. Without this recommendation, a branch manager cannot sanction a loan. because banks have a concept of maker and checker. One will make and the other will check. So the credit officer appraises the proposal and the sanctioning authority conveys sanction. He or she confirms, yes, this is fine and let's sanction the loan. Once the loan is sanctioned, sanction letter is prepared. Then we call upon the borrower and we execute documents. Okay, whatever I have shared will change depending on the kind of loan. If the same borrower comes for a loan of 1 crore rupees, there are certain other requirements. Or if the borrower comes for a loan of 1 lakh rupees, there are little less requirements. If the borrower comes for a loan of 10 lakh rupees, there are other requirements. Okay, we will discuss these gradually. Now, this is the practical aspect of banking. You will not find this in a book. Like I'm telling you this like a story. This is what happens. So once the sanction letter is done, we will call upon the borrower and we will execute documents. Documents is like a contract is being signed between the customer and between the borrower and the bank. So once that agreement has been signed, bank will release money to the customer. So now bank is in a position to take the borrower to the court. The bank can initiate legal actions against the borrowers because they have signed an agreement. Execution of documents has already taken place, wherein we take stamp papers. So once the documentation is done, if there is any security, we will charge that security. I will tell you what it means later. And then the money is given to the borrower. Now, once the money is given, you as a credit officer has to check whether he or she is using that money for the purpose for which loan was given. For small loans, you do not check this very thoroughly. But for big loans, let's say 10 lakh and above, you make sure that the borrower is using this money for the purpose for which loan was given. Because if the borrower does not use that money for that purpose, that will lead to diversion of funds, which we consider as fraud. Because अगर हमने उसको let's say कोई गाड़ी खरीदने के लिए लोन दिया था और उसने गाड़ी खरीदी ही नहीं और कल खाता खराब हो जाता है, तो बैंक अब उसकी कैसे रिकवरी करेगा? बैंक गाड़ी तो बेच ही नहीं पाएगा क्योंकि गाड़ी उसने खरीदी ही नहीं. So now it becomes fraud. So due diligence is a continuous process. As a credit officer, as a banker, you have to continuously monitor your customers, especially the borrowers, क्योंकि उन्होंने आपसे पैसा लिया हुआ है. आपको देखना है ये पैसे का क्या कर रहा है, इसका बिजनेस चल रहा है नहीं चल रहा है. You getting my point? My purpose is कि आपको ये चीज समझ आना जानी चाहिए. And this is the practical aspect of banking. ऐसे ही करोड़ों के फ्रॉड होते हैं और ऐसे ही अच्छे लोन्स दिए जाते हैं. The role of credit officer is one of the most important. Credit is a very important thing. And you will enjoy credit if you understand these things. Usually books में या जो हमें पढ़ाने वाले होते हैं उन्होंने बैंकिंग में काम किया नहीं होता, उनको ये चीजें पता ही नहीं है कि चैलेंजेस क्या हैं, ड्यू डिलिजेंस किसे कहते हैं. आपके पास कोई कस्टमर आता है और बोलता है सर मुझे लोन कर दो. आप उससे पूछते हो भाई कौन सा लोन कर दें? सर कोई भी लोन कर दो 2 लाख रुपए का. क्या करोगे पैसे का? He is blank. That means he is not a genuine borrower. जिसको पता ही नहीं है कि उसको पैसे किस लिए चाहिए, वो आपका पैसा पता नहीं कहाँ लगाएगा, घूमने चले जाए. He may gamble that money. So you have to simply interact with your customers. आप बात करोगे, आपको बातों से पता चल जाएगा वो कितना इन्फॉर्मेटिव है. वो जो भी बिजनेस करता है, अगर वो एक्चुअली बिजनेस करता होगा, उसको अपने बिजनेसेस के सारे इन्स एंड आउट्स पता होगा कि सर इतना हमें आजकल मुनाफा हो रहा है, यहाँ पे हमारा पैसा ब्लॉक है, गवर्नमेंट की ये पॉलिसी हमारे लिए गलत है. सो दिस all these things tell you whether the borrower is genuine or not. If you as a credit officer cannot ascertain whether the borrower is genuine, it is very difficult that you will sanction a quality loan. And these are some of the qualities that are required in a credit officer. You have to be very well read. You have to have very diverse knowledge. That is why it is very interesting. मतलब ये ऐसा काम है आप जिसमें बोर हो ही नहीं सकते. फॉर एग्जाम्पल मैं आपको बताता हूँ. सो लेट्स से आपने किसी को लोन किया था प्लांट एंड मशीनरी के लिए, हमने 2 करोड़ का लोन किया था और उसने वो प्लांट एंड मशीनरी तो सारी खरीदी नहीं, खाता खराब हो गया. अब जब बैंक ऐसे पैसे को रिकवर करने जाता है तो बैंक उसकी प्लांट एंड मशीनरी को बेच के भी पैसे रिकवर करता. लेकिन जब उसने प्लांट एंड मशीनरी खरीदी ही नहीं, यानी कि एंड यूज ऑफ फंड्स वाज नॉट कंफर्म्ड, तो अब बैंक पैसा कैसे रिकवर करेगा? तो इस केस में बैंक फ्रॉड रिपोर्ट करता है. यानी कि आपको या आपके ब्रांच मैनेजर को पुलिस में एफआईआर करानी। आप अपने बैंक का जो सर्कल ऑफिस या रीजनल ऑफिस होता है उसको लिख के बताते हो कि भाई ऐसे ऐसे लोन किया था एंड द बोरोवर हैज नॉट बॉट दी एसेट्स, या उसने बेच दिए वो एसेट्स। फिर हो सकता है आपका बैंक इन्वेस्टिगेशन करवाए, वहां पे किसी को भेजे, किसी ऑफिसर को डिप्यूट करके, वो रिपोर्ट देता है, हाँ कंफर्म हो जाता है कि यहाँ पे कुछ नहीं है। फिर आपका हेड ऑफिस आरबीआई को रिपोर्ट करता है फ्रॉड, एफएमआर कहते हैं उसको, फ्रॉड मॉनिटरिंग रिपोर्ट, एफएमआर, फ्रॉड मॉनिटरिंग रिपोर्ट। So the head office of the bank reports fraud to RBI. Once the fraud has been reported, then you have to file FIR. Up to 1 lakh, ज्यादातर बैंकों में ब्रांच हेड को पावर होती है कि वो खुद ही एफआईआर कर दे, परमिशन की जरूरत नहीं है 1 लाख रुपए तक के लोन। उससे ऊपर 1 लाख से लेट से 3 करोड़ तक सर्कल हेड, ये बैंक टू बैंक वेरी करता है, तो उस केस में सर्कल हेड पावर परमिशन देगा कि हाँ भाई आप एफआईआर कराओ। फिर इसमें क्या है, 1 लाख से 3 करोड़ तक के लोन की जो एफआईआर होती है वो स्टेट के इकोनॉमिक ऑफेंसेस विंग में होती है। हर एक स्टेट में ईओडब्ल्यू होता है, इकोनॉमिक ऑफेंसेस विंग, वहां पे आप ये एफआईआर करवाते हैं। तो ये सारी अंडरस्टैंडिंग एज अ क्रेडिट ऑफिसर आपको होनी चाहिए। क्रेडिट ऑफिसर डज नॉट मीन कि सिंपली आपको सिर्फ क्रेडिट अप्रेज करना है, नहीं नहीं, एनपीए मैनेजमेंट इज ऑल्सो पार्ट ऑफ इट। जब आपको पता होगा कि बोरोवर कैसे पैसे को मिस यूटिलाइज कर सकता है, तभी आप सूटेबल क्वेश्चंस पूछेंगे बोरोवर से, एंड अकॉर्डिंगली आप अपने प्रपोजल को अप्रेज कर पाएंगे। ठीक है, वी हैव ऑलमोस्ट 1 minute 40 seconds, so if you want to give any feedback or if you want to share anything, please go ahead. We will take lots of such sessions in the future. बल्कि मैं आपसे क्वेश्चंस लूंगा, क्योंकि आपके क्वेश्चन से ये आसान हो जाता है कि मैं एक डायरेक्टेड आंसर दे सकता हूँ कि बेसिकली आप क्या जानना चाह रहे हो। एनीथिंग यू गाइज वांट टू शेयर, वांट टू से? हाँ जी
Sir, please take one section on NPA in detail, sir.
क्या कह रहे हैं शिल्पा जी आप?
Sir, NPA पे एक सेशन लीजिए डिटेल में.
हाँ नहीं नहीं, आई विल टेल यू अबाउट एनपीए, क्या क्या रिकवरी मैकेनिज्म।
Sir, am I audible?
यस यस शिल्पा जी, व्हाट आई सेड इज अभी हमारे 1 मिनट से भी कम का समय है। आई विल टेल यू दिस ऑन नेक्स्ट सेशन कि कब अकाउंट एनपीए होता है, एनपीए होने के बाद कैसे उसकी रिकवरी,
Okay, sir.
और हमारे पास क्या क्या ऑप्शंस हैं। डोंट वरी, मैं आपको डिटेल में बताऊंगा। ओके अभी माय ओनली रिक्वेस्ट टू यू इज
Okay, sir.
है, इसको आप पढ़िए, बैंकर्स हैंडबुक ऑन क्रेडिट मैनेजमेंट। थैंक यू सो मच।